Hi, I'm Sophie from Stratus, and today we're going to talk about getting your recommenders prepped. So recommendations are often one of the most stressful parts of an application for an MBA because it's like the one thing that's really out of your control. But honestly, it is one of the most straightforward parts of the process, and we're going to dive in today on some things that can make it easier for you and for your recommenders. All right, first let's talk about recommender selection. So when you're thinking about which roughly 2 people you are going to be asking to write these recommendations, consider folks who can talk specifically to your leadership potential and abilities, also what makes you unique and what makes you stand out, hopefully some superlatives as well, how you compare to your peers, and how you respond to feedback. That is a question on a lot of the applications. Also, if you are thinking about asking someone and they seem a little bit less than enthused or like, oh, I've just got a lot going on, I'm really busy, just give them an out. That's not someone you want to ask. You want someone who's really going to pound the table for you and say, you are one of the best folks they've worked with. Similarly, I really can't stress this enough. Don't just ask someone who has a really impressive title, like going straight to the CEO of the company, if you don't actually have a relationship with them or have done, a lot of work closely with them that they could comment on. This is a mistake a lot of people make. And it's really, at best, this person's going to write you a really average recommendation with no specifics. At worst, the admissions committee is going to be like, wow, there's another one of those people who just thought they would go straight to the CEO and ask for a recommendation, but they obviously don't know them. It's totally okay to ask somebody who has a lower title, but, is still a supervisor or someone that you have worked closely with in a supervisory role that can actually talk about you in detail. That's the most important thing. Finally, I just want to say a lot of schools are going to say, we need one from a direct supervisor or your current supervisor. And maybe you've got some reasons why you just can't do that. That's totally okay. Like, that is a normal thing that people write about in their optional essays all the time. So just be prepared to explain it so that they don't wonder why you're not following the instructions. Next, let's talk about preparing your recommenders. So this is quite a bit of writing on their part, and it's going to take, several hours of their time, and they're not getting paid for it. So you want to be as polite as possible and give them some notes to reference so that they aren't just starting from scratch and feeling like, they have to totally do this on their own. So we will talk about that shortly when I go through like a structured framework of what you want to include there. But the other thing to consider in preparation is how much time you're giving them. So a polite number of weeks would be roughly 8, but, let's be real, a lot of recommenders are not going to submit until the night before it's due. But you're going to show the fact that you are being polite and prepared by giving them plenty of time. And you know what? Sometimes these recommenders surprise me and they actually get it in really early. That would obviously be a nice weight off your shoulders because, again, this is the one thing not really in your control while you're rushing to get everything done for your own submission for everything else. Another thing you might want to mention is the GMAC Common Letter of Recommendation. Go to GMAC's website and see which schools are on that list because let's say you're asking a recommender to write 5 recommendations. Well, if 3 of them are on that list, then you're really only asking them to write you 3 recommendations. So that feels like a much smaller ask and less overwhelming. So when you present them with this list, you'll want to also go ahead and lead with that so that they realize, oh, okay, this is not as much work as I thought. All right, let's talk about what to share with your recommenders. I recommend putting all of this in one email and keeping it really simple. They have enough going on in their inbox, most likely, and it would be really nice for them to not have to go look at 5 different emails with a million different attachments. I actually only recommend attaching one thing, your resume. So I'll walk you now through each of the elements of what should be in the body of that email. First is just an intro, thanking them in advance and just letting them know how much you appreciate it. Next would be the deadlines. Go ahead and list all the schools you're applying to, the deadline, right down to the hour that it is due, because some of them are due, at midnight, some of them are due at 5 p.m., some of them are due at noon. It's definitely worth getting specific about that in this email. If you really want to be nice, you can also convert it to their time zone. Next is technical information. I can't tell you how many recommenders say, wait, what do I do? How do I submit this? Do I write a letter or an email to someone? Just let them know how this is going to work with the portal and everything for each of the schools that you're applying to. All the information is going to be in there, but you just want to let them know that in this email so they don't feel like they need to go chase it down. Next, you're going to want to talk about yourself finally and your background. So this is the place where you're going to talk about your goals, short-term and long-term, what you want to get out of your MBA, and what traits and stories you'd like for them to convey. We'll get to those stories in a moment. You're also going to want to share with them your relationship. Some of these people maybe you haven't worked with for a few years, so it's worth, just being a little cordial and reminding them of your relationship, what projects you worked on, and during what time period, because this is a question they're all going to get asked, and it's kind of nice if they can just copy and paste it out of there. All right, now let's talk about those experiences I mentioned earlier. So you're going to want to mention maybe 2 or 3 experiences that cover all the traits you asked them to share. And these should be structured in like the CAR framework. So context or challenge, the actions that you took, and the result or the impact. It's also worth mentioning feedback. A lot of schools are going to ask for a time that they gave you feedback and how you took it, basically how you applied it and what you're like with that piece of feedback now that it's been several months or several years. So you could give them a little layup and suggest something that they had already mentioned and how you've grown since then. Finally, just trust the process. I know it's scary, but if you do everything I just mentioned, hand it off to them, then it's on their plate. And all you can really do is gently remind them every once in a while if you can see on the portal that they still haven't uploaded it yet. You don't want to be annoying about this because, like I said earlier, they're not getting paid and it's going to take some time. But just do your best to make sure that they feel prepared and supported by you as they are supporting you in this next step of your career. Another thing about the process is a lot of schools are going to ask you, do you waive your rights to view these recommendations? And I understand that from your perspective, you might be thinking, yeah, I want to see what they wrote about me. But go ahead and just say, yes, I waive my rights, because you don't want to come off as insecure. It's not going to make a difference anyway. And you don't want to come across as someone who doesn't trust your recommenders. You're also going to want to thank your recommenders for all of the work that they did for you and send them updates. As you hear back from each school, whether it's positive or negative, let them know. They're invested in this process now and they put a lot of time into this. So, they're going to want to be coming along for the journey of what your results were. And of course, let them know ultimately where you do end up attending school. If you still have any questions about the recommender process or anything about your MBA application journey, feel free to reach out to any of the counselors here at Stratus for a free 30-minute consultation to talk about your profile or any questions that you've got. Thanks.